People love to figure out who's smarter, who's wiser, who's going to be more successful. If you think about it in school, there's all sorts of tests that are trying to figure this out. We've got game shows like Jeopardy, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Are you smarter than a fifth grader? As if that's the highest standard of intellect that you can achieve. A lot of the time in our own daily interactions, we would like to be seen as the smart one, or as the one who has our head on straight, the one that has understanding. But James gives us a little bit different way to show wisdom here at the end of James chapter 3. Let's look in verse 13. He says, "Who is wise and understanding among you?" So you think you're smarter than a fifth grader? Like, who do you think is wise? "By his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom." So James gives us two things that actually show true wisdom and true understanding here. The first, he says good conduct and works. That, like he said back in chapter 2, he talked about how we need to be doers of the word and not hearers only. That our faith ought to lead us to action. So also, if we think that we're wise, if we think we're a really smart person, but it doesn't change how we live, then we're fooling ourselves. That's not true wisdom if it's not turning us to do good conduct and for us to have good works in our lives. But then he also uses this term, the meekness of wisdom. This is it's like humility. It's not thinking too highly, not being impressed by our own self-importance. Someone who's actually wise is not going to be puffing themselves up. They're going to recognize, oh, well, I'm not all that. I just have what the Lord has blessed me with. They're not going to be showing off how wise they are. They're going to be quiet doers of the word. They're going to be using their faith and their wisdom to transform their lives into living good lives that honor the Lord, and they're going to be doing it quietly. They're going to be doing it in humility and not building themselves up and showing it all off. But there's a contrast to that. It says, but, so anytime you see but, we're thinking about, okay, this is something that is different that's going to bring up. If you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. So bitter jealousy, this is like an insecurity thing. I want the attention that person has. I want people to think I'm as smart as that person is. And then selfish ambition is building up in our hearts, wanting to make a name for ourselves. And the world is full of people who are trying to make a name for themselves, trying to reach some level of power or influence or intellect, or boasting to just try and pump themselves up to this point and drawing attention to their own success. But this is not how it's supposed to be. And he says in verse 15, this is not the wisdom that comes down from above. He says, this isn't God's wisdom. If you're trying to show off how wise you are and how smart you are, that's not wisdom from God. Why are you trying to show off to other people? Are you trying to show off to your friends how you're better than them in some way? That's not from God. He says it's earthly. This is stuff that the world does. He says it's unspiritual. Acting in this way, trying to show off your intellect to someone, or trying to show off how successful you're going to be or how wise you are, it's not spiritual. That's not something from God. And it goes even further. It's demonic. That puffing ourselves up and making ourselves look better in front of other people is actually the stuff of demons. That's some strong language. The world really does want to make it all about you. It's all about treating yourself. It's all about following your heart and doing whatever it takes to get yourself to the top. But James is saying this is not the wisdom of God. That's the wisdom of the world. That's demonic stuff. What's the result of this kind of living? Verse 16, where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. When we live our lives in jealousy and in selfish ambition, pointing into ourselves and trying to give ourselves all the attention, evil is what comes out. Our success becomes more important than other people in our hearts. Our name becomes more important than God's name in our hearts. We lose all sense of wisdom and of understanding. And we're going to see next in this passage, in the last couple of verses in chapter 3, that James tells us what the alternative to jealousy and selfish ambition actually looks like in this life. So look for that. The next couple of verses, we're going to see what the wisdom from God actually looks like played out in our lives.